And just to remind you again, there will be an online PDF file that goes into detail about how to download and install Python and PyCharm. And again, just a reminder from last Tuesday, we are using Python 3.4.3.5 are quite all right, and you're using PyCharm Community Edition, and that should be 5. It'll have an icon that looks very much like the slide that you see on the screen. Let's look at some Python basics first before we get started. Number one, Python was created by Guido van Rossum, and he was a Monty Python Flying Circus fan. If you haven't seen that, look it up on the internet, go out to YouTube and take a look at it. Several movies have been made by the Monty Python group, including Monty Python and the Holy Grail, Monty Python's Flying Circus. I have one of their shorts that I'll bring in and show you next week to give you an idea of what that group is like. It's a minimalistic language. That means that once you learn the reserved words and you know basic college algebra, there's not a whole lot more that you need to learn. And we'll go into that a little bit more in the next slide. Pseudocode or pseudocode, natural code really is a strong point of it. A lot of what we do in Python is almost speaking to the computer. So we say things in English, and you'll see that when we get into our little exercise for today. By the way, Python and PyCharm are installed on your computers in the lab, so you can come in here and use this room to practice, do whatever you want to do whenever you have the chance. It's also available over in room 210. Let me know if you think you might want to use there, because you have to have permission to get into that lab. Because Python is such a simple language to work with, pretty much you say what you want to do. It's a lot easier to concentrate on the solution than concentrating how the heck am I going to program this thing. If you've had experience with C# or C++, you really have to concentrate on the language and how you're going to do things, where in Python we don't have to worry about that. So that's another benefit of using this as one of the 4th generation languages. Also, it makes it a lot easier to write scripts as you're doing that. Some of the information additionally about Python: it's a high-level language, and that means that there's no memory management. When I first learned programming, I learned assembly language, and we had to go in and not only do all the work that we had to do, but we had to manage each memory location that the program used. We don't have to do that in Python. That's one of the big advantages of the Python language. It takes 1/3 less code than C++, C# or Java. So that means that if you're writing what you need is a very compact piece of code to go into a script, you can create it with Python, and it's going to be even less than some of the other 4GL languages use. It's very portable. It can go from a Unix platform. Some of you may have Wild Bill Richards as your Unix instructor. He will tell you don't ever give buyers a check, and I will tell you the same thing. Ask him why, and you'll find out. Bill and I flew together for, I think, 10 or 12 years. So good guy.
All sorts of stories.
Yeah. Unfortunately, most of them are true. Bill is great on Unix, and you're going to learn a lot from him. Your Python, what you learn now, will transfer over to Unix very easily. it'll transfer to Apple. However, with the 3.5 code, we found that there are some of the reserved words that won't work. And if you're sitting there going, what is he talking about, reserved words? I'll show you that in a couple of slides. But it's a very portable language. That makes it good for us. It's object-oriented. That means we can create an object and we can reuse it and reuse it and reuse it anytime we want to. And we'll get into that probably around spring break time. And we'll start to create objects as we use the code and get further and further into the textbook. And we can create, and there are available to us, a variety of different libraries out on the internet that allow us to do things with Python that we don't have to sit down and figure the code out. And I'll show you as part of what we'll do after spring break how to create your own libraries. In fact, that's going to be one of your assignments. So, very good language, very small footprint. Big important point, it's free. Python has always been free, and it's out there and it does a lot of things behind the scenes.
Does that mean within one program with the libraries you could create a library of subroutines that while you're writing the main program you can go back to the library and do a certain subroutine without having to input the code from the whole?
The question was, once you create a library, can you use that subroutine? We call them a function in Python. Can you use that subroutine over and over again without rewriting the code? And the answer is yes. And we'll start doing that very quickly. I'll show you that as we get into it. We'll create our own libraries, as I said, after spring break. Good question. Again, that shows you the functionality of Python. Makes it a whole lot easier. Now, I'm going to show you examples of the interface. I want you to watch. This is not the audience participation part yet. I'll tell you when you can start whacking on the keyboard. If you want to do an installation at home or you want to stay in the classroom after class is over and do an installation, you want to go out to python.org is the website. You can click on downloads and it will show you Python. When I did this slide, it was 3.5.1. All right. So if you have 3.4 already installed, that'll be good. 3.5.1 is what we are supposed to have in the lab. All right. It's that simple. You download it. It'll talk you through doing the installation. It will want to add something to the root path of your computer. Perfectly fine. Not a problem. So follow the instructions and it'll take you right to it. Oh, python.org. That's the version that we want. There's also a Mac version available on here that you can download. Anybody really creative and run Unix at home or Linux, all right, you can get a Linux or a Unix version. However, I would like you to use the Windows version for class, please. There are some minor differences. All right, there are 3 different interfaces that we can use when we work at Python or with Python, and this is the first one. So what we want to look at is you could use the shortcut, the Windows key and R, and then type CMD, and that is going to bring up the DOS interface or the command line interface. When you do that, you want to type Python. It'll take a while, and you can do that from any directory. Anybody know what the command line code is to go to the root directory on your computer? CD is correct. It's CD ... and that'll back you all the way up to the command directory. Python will actually run from whatever directory your command line is in. So we bring up Python, type in Python, press enter. It'll take a few seconds and it'll come up. On this computer that I made this slide from, we were running 3.4.3. That'll come up and you'll see that in the window. It'll also tell you how to get help and things about the copyright. Now we're in Python. It'll be indicated by these three greater than symbols. If I want to code in Python, and I talked about reserved words, here's your first reserved word, print. Notice it's lowercase. Most of the reserved words in Python are indicated as lowercase. It will not accept print as a capital letter. It'll tell you you have an error. We use a set of parentheses, and when you're working in command line mode, you have to put that in. We can use double or single quote marks. My preference, and I recommend that you look at using single quote marks. Get into the habit of doing that. You'll learn why in a couple of weeks. Standard brand new programmer program, hello world, quote marks, into parentheses. All we do then is press enter, and down here underneath where our program was written, we have hello world. Now, I said there are three interfaces. The first one is the command line. You'll use the command line if you just need to do something very quickly in Python. What do you see as one of the problems with the command line? And this may be a little bit over your skill level right now. When we work on the command line, there's no easy way to save the code we write. So if we want to test something out, we can do it, but in Windows, that command line, very hard to save, if at all. Our next option is to use idle. And idle is actually named for an individual that was on the Mighty Python show. And the creator of Python liked this guy so much that he named the onboard interpreter after the gentleman. So that's why it's idle, if you're curious. Notice idle says the version that we're using and that it is a 32-bit program. Recommend you go ahead and just run the 32-bit program as you do your download. So this is the second way that we can interface. And you bring up idle, and now it gets a little bit more friendly. We'll come up in the shell, and notice, let's see, we can type in, where did I do it? Okay, this is just an example. This is where I've already run it. But we'll come up in the shell, and we have to go in and set up a new file, and that will allow us to go ahead and create our code. Our print, just like we did on the command line, small print, parentheses, quotation marks, and what we're going to say. The third interface that you have access to, and is what we're going to use most of the time in this classroom, is PyCharm Community Edition 5. This is a great little tool. It'll tell you where your files are. It gives you a debug window and a run screen that you can use, and it also gives you a program window. One of the most important things, and one of the reasons I went with it, two very specific things that it does. It allows us to add line numbers, and it allows us to do a debug on the fly and do a partial debug. That may not mean a lot to you right now. It will when we get into writing a little lengthier code in about 3 or 4 weeks. So, this is our third interface. DOS, or the command line, idle, and PyCharm, which is what we're going to use. Notice here again that unlike the other two examples, this is actually color-coded. And so most of your reserved words will be in blue, whatever you're going to print out in the quotation marks, either single or double quotation marks, to mean that you're going to print something literally, will be in a lighter blue. All right, notice the number line right here, and I'll show you how to turn that on. Down here, this is a printout of what this program is supposed to do. So it says print hello world. We ran it, hello world. It works just the way it should. Notice what else it provides for us. It provides us the location and the program, what version of Python that we're actually running. And so that's a help when you're out there and programming and you get a piece of code from someone that doesn't work. It could be, if they sent you a printout of their run screen, it could be that they're using a different version than what you're using. There are a lot of commands in 3.5 that have changed from 2.7. So that's the last time you're going to hear me mention 2.7. Notice it also says the process is complete. If we had an error, the PyCharm interpreter will come up and give us an idea of what the error is and the line or lines that error occurred on. As we get further into programming with Python, it will also go back and tell us if the error that the program we created caused an error in a library function or a library module that we're using. So again, it's a very, very useful tool, and as we go further into the class, I'll show you some more of the things that it can provide for you to help. You create a project first. In that project, you create your Python scripts. All right? And again, the nice thing about this interpreter, it shows you what you have open and the different scripts that are available. That'll become helpful as we go further into the semester. Across the top, you have help files, and you can look at all of these different things. I encourage you to do that either here in the classroom or if you download it and work with it at home. A very, very simple, out-of-the-box program, interpreter for Python that you can use. Did I see a hand? Okay, what I want you to do is go ahead to the Start button. Let's open your Windows. Let's find Python, and let's open up the IDE or the idle interpreter. So that's where it is. When you get it open, your screen should look something like this. Python 3.5.1 or some variation of that, and shell. And I'm curious, what's the number in the classroom? The Python number?
3.5.
Okay, good. Give William and Roy a pat on the back. All right, everybody have this. Yeah, looking for feedback. Anybody not have it? All right, good. This is going to be a good class. Okay, at your line here, type in print, parentheses, quotes, hello world, and your quotes. Notice you should get a prompt also about how you're doing things.
Does it matter if you put a space between the reserve word and the...
Generally it doesn't. It'll figure it out. Now, I made a mistake on purpose. You may or may not have made that mistake. Yeah, and what I didn't do is I didn't put the close quote marks. All right, so I get a prompt that tells me that I made a mistake. All right, so when you're in the idle interpreter, you don't get a whole lot of error code. You get the information that you made a mistake. It's not going to tell you a whole lot about it. You'll find out PyCharm tells a little more. Fix it, rerun the program, and it prints out hello world. Give you a second to finish that up, and we'll go on to PyCharm. Be careful when you download PyCharm. There is a professional edition that they want a lot of money for. There's also an educational edition, and that is, my best definition of it is crippleware, in that I have to program a lesson in the PyCharm community before it'll work for you. And I want you to be able to experiment, so that's why we're using the community edition. Icon for it you should find in your start menu or in your program tab. JetBrains is the company that creates it. They create a whole lot of other programs. When you go out to their website, jetbrains.com, you'll see several programs, hopefully, that you recognize. We're looking for PyCharm Community Edition 5.0.3. Any 5 dot version of Community Edition will work. So go ahead and bring that up. The first thing that you may notice is it's going to bring up a tip of the day. Don't ignore these, especially as you're getting started. It'll bring you up tips about the interpreter, and every once in a while there'll be a tip about Python in there. So take a look at those. If you really get bored or we get iced in during this part of the semester, you can go read all these if you want to. Please don't tell me if you did that. You can go to the next tip or close. So I usually read the tip and then close it. And you should have a screen up that looks something like this, and I want you to click the File menu. It'll bring up this flyout menu. And what we do first is create a new project. So you click on New Project, and it'll open up an additional flyout menu here to the right. And we have the option for File, Directory, Python Package, Python File, or HTML file. To start off with this semester, we're going to use Python File. Yes, ma'am?
My directory, I guess, is wrong, so I can't get past like the first spot.
Okay, I'm not going to take class time to troubleshoot. Look on with one of your neighbors and remind me after class, and I'll take a look at that machine. What's the machine number up in the corner?
14.
14.
If you just click location, you hit users and then your.
Well, I mean, it's already in there. Administrator, PyCharm project.
No, you can't because you're not an administrator.
Okay, wait, we're not going to take
Okay.
class time, all right? Because I want to get you through this. This is what's going to come out. Look on with your neighbor. I don't think either one of them bite. Superman, he may, don't, as long as you don't have Krypton, you'll be all right. All right. Sorry, Superman. Cool shirt, like it. All right, so we're using Python File. Next week, I'm going to show you how you can modify that to personally create a Python file with your marker in it. But for today, we'll just do it this way. When you click on File, it's going to bring up a file name. So go ahead and type Hello World. Python is very friendly. You can use spaces. Just about anything that you use to create a normal Windows file, you'll be able to use with Python. Question?
I think we both have the same issue she has, 'cause
What's your computer numbers?
mine's 15.
I think you have to go and put it in your users.
It says PC7 on P11.
And 7. All right. If you three would, stay with me for just a couple seconds after class and we'll check them out. All right? Now, before we start typing our program, after you've got the file created, what I'd like you to do is come over to Settings. You click on Settings and it'll bring up this flyout menu for you, and you want to come down under Editor to Appearance. To the right of Appearance, there are several different things that we can check. Go ahead and check Show Line Number. When we're writing a 1, 2, or 3 line program, you could probably do it without line numbers, but get into the habit of having line numbers turned on. Because, as I told you Tuesday, I wrote a program with 10,000 lines of code in it. I really appreciated knowing where the line number was that I had an error. A lot easier than searching through all the code for that problem. You can also, at your leisure, take a look at the different options that are available in setting up PyCharm. Anything you want to change, modify, go ahead. I would ask that you keep your print size for your program and your printouts window at the bottom at least 12. And it makes it easier when the machine prints it out for me to read and grade. This is how I set my programs up. How you do yours, pretty much up to you. In Python, a number sign means that we're putting a comment in. And so I always put my name at the top of it. That's a holdover from when I learned programming way back, probably before most of you were born. Anybody? No, I won't even do that. Second line, I always put the date that I created the program. Another holdover from Dr. Jerry Lewis. Notice my numbers are turned on. I skip a line here. By the way, most of the time, Python will just totally ignore those blank lines. So if you want to space out your program and you want to separate modules and functions and if-then and do-while statements, you can do that. No problem at all. Line 4, just like we did on the command line and just like we did in idle, print, parentheses, hello world. But notice when you type this in the interpreter, what happens? When you put in the first parentheses, the second one appears. When you put in the first quote mark, the second one appears. So that's one of the nice things that the PyCharm interpreter does for us. It completes some of our work. Go ahead and get that in. Once you have it in, right-click anywhere in the coding window, and it'll bring up this flyout. We've got a whole lot of different things that we can do. Several of those we'll talk about in the coming weeks. But what we're looking for in particular is run hello world. See, it's got a green triangle with it. Go ahead and select that. Notice also that there's a shortcut key, Control Shift and F10. So if you're into shortcut keys, you can do that. Thought I had one more slide. Go ahead and press that, then look down at the bottom. It should have, bottom left-hand side, should have printed out Hello World. Told you the Python version that it had, where the file was located, and code complete. Pretty easy. Let's talk a little bit about how you're going to submit your homework. Within PyCharm, there is a print function under the file. Now, this is going to print out our code. All right, so I want to have my cursor in the code window, then I'm going to come over and click on File and click Print. It'll bring up a dialog box. Make sure you have line numbers selected and draw border selected. Here again is where you can set your printout font. For my purposes, I always use the same font, Arial, and I use 12. As long as you print out in something 12 that's going to be easily readable, not a problem. Pretty simple right here. Notice at the top, it's going to tell you exactly what it's going to print out. It's going to print out the file helloworld.py. Some people will tell you, hey, you need to use camel case. Anybody give me a quick definition of camel case?
Capitalize the first letter of every word.
No. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Correct. Capitalize the first letter of every word. All right? So you could use camel case. I'll tell you what I've found out. In the different companies I've written code for, everybody has their own way they want it done. So whatever you prefer to do in writing your code out, please do it. I have some students who like to put my as the first two letters of any file that they create, so they know it's their document, not the document that they downloaded to take a look at. I'll accept it any way you want to work with it. You have all this filled in. By the way, the defaults are fine. Suggest you leave it at portrait. That usually works for all the coding exercise that will do. Hit print, and that's what you'll get. Gives me a border to look at, and it'll print everything that you have in your code window. Notice it prints the documents, it gives us the line number, it puts the spaces in, and it shows me the code that I've written. That's how I want you to turn your code in. Along with your code, I want you to turn in, also, very rarely will I ask you to turn in a printed copy, other than maybe here in the classroom. Go ahead and use a PDF file. You can download Foxit, F-O-X-I-T. It's a free program, very good PDF printer and reader. If you would like to buy it instead of paying several $100s for Adobe, this one's like $29.95. And we've started to go to it here on campus. So you want to print your file as a PDF and then turn it in. Now, little bit different when we want to print out the results window. It actually has, I didn't put it in. It actually has a printer icon right here. So instead of having to go up to the file menu, you can go right there to the printer icon, press it. It'll bring up a very similar window to what you saw before, but notice at the top, it doesn't say it's printing out a specific file. It's actually printing out the console text. And this area down here is referred to as the console or the run window or the debug window. Kind of interchangeable. Again, show line numbers, draw border. Same thing with the font size. PDF again, please. And that's what that result looks like. Again, the version of Python that it used, where it's located. It also tells me on this file where I'm storing my Hello World script. So it works extremely well if you've got several different scripts running. Here's the printout, finished code. Notice it provides line numbers here also in the printout version. So that's how I want you to submit your work. What we're going to look at next week, we're going to get more into coding. We're going to practice some Python code, and I'm going to give you a couple things let you experiment the rest of the day this morning, and I'll troubleshoot those 3 computers. And we're going to get into how you debug a program. Also, a lot of faculty won't teach you pseudocode, but I think that's one of the important parts of doing work and learning how to code correctly if you're going to go out there. At FAA, we did peer reviews on pseudocode before we ever wrote an actual line of code in the C# interpreter. And so pseudocode is just an outline in English of what your code is going to accomplish. So we'll get into that next week also.